My name is Todd Smith from the law firm of Power, Rogers & Smith in Chicago. Late yesterday, 32 additional lawsuits were filed against Sterigenics for their conduct in our communities. The families who lost loved ones and those who have been injured, whose lives have been devastated by the cancer caused by Sterigenics' conduct, have filed those lawsuits. Over decades, Sterigenics has polluted the atmosphere in the communities of Darien, Clarendon Hills, Burr Ridge, and beyond. Sterigenics has known about the carcinogens that ethylene oxide is and the injuries that it causes to so many people. Literally thousands of people sickened by their conduct. So as a result, the community is fighting back, and in addition to the 32 lawsuits that were filed yesterday, and the reason that you're seeing these cases filed now is that 11 cases had been dragged over to federal court by Sterigenics on what's called a removal process. And late last week, the Chief Judge, Rebecca Pallmeyer, remanded those cases on the erroneous removal that Sterigenics undertook. These cases are local cases. They're in our communities. These are not federal court cases. These should be heard in our local courts, and that's what's going to happen. These cases have now been filed in the Cook County Circuit Court, the additional 32 and the 11 that were sent back by Judge Pallmeyer. Unfortunately and regrettably at this point, Sterigenics seems to be on a path back to business as usual. They've claimed that they will have this down to 85 pounds per year, and we see no reason to believe them. They polluted the airs there with thousands and thousands of pounds for decades. In some years, tens of thousands of pounds. So what's happened all of a sudden that they're able to do something about it? With a carcinogen that they have known to be a carcinogen since at least the early 1990s. What's happening now is they want to be trusted, and they're making this claim so they can reopen. The citizens in the area, of course, and none of us really should, anywhere in this state, want that to happen. And one of the ways they're fighting back is with these civil lawsuits. Cases that represent the loss of lives and devastating injuries from Sterigenics' conduct. It should stop. It should stop now. And fortunately, we're back in state court to do something about it and move forward. I'm going to hand this now to Steve Hart to say a few words. We are from law firms that represent a number of different clients, and we were part of the filing ourselves at Power, Rogers & Smith, and Mr. Hart's firm and others here represented did as well. But we also have the following folks here to talk to you that have been victims of the conduct of Sterigenics: Teresa Flores, Lisa Flanagan, Trish Watt, Jana Conover, Colleen Heller, and Jean Hochhalter. And they'll talk to you shortly. Thank you. Steve?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Stephen Hart from the Chicago law firm of Hart, McLaughlin, and Eldridge. We have the distinct pleasure and honor to represent many of the victims of Sterigenics' horrible corporate behavior here. Colleen Heller is here with us today, and she and her family have suffered the ultimate price of corporate greed, of corporate arrogance. She has lost the love of her life, the father to her child, her husband. And it's because Sterigenics moved into a neighborhood, a densely populated neighborhood, just outside of Chicago, and engaged in a business activity that involved the use of a cancer-causing chemical. Now, they knew that the chemicals they were using in their process cause cancer. They did not test. They did not warn. But instead, what they chose to do is emit, spit out, dispel a cancer-causing agent into the community for their neighbors and others to breathe and be exposed to. They literally use this community as guinea pigs, canaries in a coal mine, and be damned the consequences. And now, thanks to Judge Pallmeyer, we're going to hold them accountable in the very communities that they affected before juries of their peers. And they will sit in judgment on Sterigenics' actions here. And we're extremely confident in our case, and we hope to make a difference in our community.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, I'm going to introduce some of the folks that are here that have been victimized by this. Regrettably, as I mentioned, Sterigenics seems to be on a path to renewing this activity. For them, it seems to be never about a safe environment, but it's about profit. It seems to be about profit. Ethylene oxide is cheap. And that's what it seems to be about. It's not even about clean medical instruments. It seems to be about profit, regardless of what may happen to other people. Gene, would you be willing? There you are. Why don't I just step out and have you sit up here?
Hi, my name is Jeanne, Jeanne Hohalter, Hochhalter. I grew up in Burr Ridge and went to school, worked all within 1 mile of Sterigenics. My school bus used to take us past Sterigenics on the way to Hinsdale South. I was exposed for almost a decade. I worked just a block and a half from their secret off-gassing warehouse, and I got breast cancer. I have no family history of it. I have all of my siblings who were out of the house prior to me are healthy, but I was exposed. And I was exposed during their time of heaviest emissions that were uncontrolled. So with going through about 15 surgeries in the past almost 6 years now, it's been hell. I've been through chemo. I've had my body mutilated. It's impacted every single part of my life, and they knew. They've known for 34 years, and they've willfully pumped this out into our communities. I've lost a baby, which is part of this, and I've had a myriad of other substantial health issues that have impacted my life. Not only does it impact my life, one of the worst parts of my life is having to tell my young son that his mom had cancer. And nobody should have to go through anything like this. And I am here to fight for justice. I feel today we're on the path to justice. Sterigenics needs to be held accountable. They seem to have a very big problem with accountability. They are not to be trusted. I am a part of the Stop Sterigenics movement, and we've been fighting to keep them closed down. And I thank this judge for putting this back into the courtroom state level where it belongs. And I look forward to bringing them to justice. Hochhalter.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you so much. Colleen, would you be willing to?
Hi, I'm Colleen Heller, Colleen Haller. I am the widow of Matt Haller. We lived in the city of Willowbrook for about 11 years. He was diagnosed with stomach cancer almost 2 years ago. It'll be almost 2 years in November. He fought really hard, and he was so brave for 16 months, but he passed on March 16th of this year. He went through multiple rounds of chemotherapy, radiation, multiple hospital stays. In just those short 16 months, he actually almost passed like twice from the cancer and the treatment of cancer. He loved our community so much. He fought for our community. We were able to pass the Matt Haller Act in our community, so there will be no other bad actors like Sterigenics that will be able to open again in the state of Illinois. I miss him terribly. I have a 4-year-old son who misses his dad, who thinks his dad is still in the hospital. We will fight for this community. We're never going to stop. We won't quit. We'll make sure that Sterigenics does not open their doors again. They are bad actors. They are not allowed in our community, and they need to get out. That's what I think.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
John?
That's good.
Good afternoon. My name is Jana Conover, Janaconev. I live on Midway Drive, which is where Sterigenics is located, about 3 blocks away from them. We moved in on June 22nd, 1987, on a 2.5-acre parcel, thinking we were buying fresh air and a healthy life. On April 3rd, 2015, I found a lump. The roller coaster, tilt-a-whirl, the carnival that followed, until I finally had a lumpectomy on May 13th, I can't even begin to describe. The anxiety, the fear. Where did this come from? Nobody in my family ever had breast cancer. But the chemotherapy itself, I went through 6 sessions. I did some research, so I learned that I should plan it for Thursdays. Fridays, I got my Lunastra. That was to fight the lack of immunity. My system was going to be very weakened. And then I had the weekend to pull myself together and go back to work again on Monday. But the side effects came, sometimes 2 and 3 a day. I never knew what to expect. Blisters in my mouth, blisters in my nose. My tongue was torn to shreds. I couldn't manufacture saliva. There's an enzyme in your saliva which you need for digestion. I couldn't eat, I couldn't swallow, and I still have issues with digestion 4.5 years later. I still suffer from dry mouth. Incredible anxiety. When I fly, I have to have an escort go with me because I'm afraid of being alone, and I just have such anxiety. I had to have a ride come here today. The worst thing is that a year and about 2 weeks after I found my cancer, my husband was diagnosed with cancer, and his has spread. He now has cancer that has spread to his bones and his bladder. He's going to be on hormone therapy for the rest of his life. There are undescribable side effects to that. In this last year, since the cat was let out of the bag about the carcinogens we have been breathing, our family, since 1987, about Sterigenics, I can't begin to describe to you the anxiety. During the day, you don't feel it, you don't realize it, but we are involuntary breathers. You lie down in your bed at night, you want to read a book or watch some television, and suddenly you're conscious of every breath you take. The EPA suggested to us that we don't open our windows. They suggested to us, the guy said he wouldn't turn on his air conditioning. Well, you see, he doesn't live in Willowbrook. So this is what we are living with, day in and day out. The anxiety is, you can't live with it. You just can't live with it. I want Sterigenics out. No level of ETO is safe. I am here because I'm fighting now not just for my family, I'm fighting for all of the communities in the area. This has got to be stopped, and Sterigenics has got to be made to pay for their evil. Thank you.
Thank you. Teresa?
Hello, my name is Teresa Flanagan, Teresa Fornek. I am 34 years old. When I was born, my family lived in Clarendon Hills. For the past 26 years, I have lived in Darien and now Burridge, so that's about 1.2 miles away from Sterigenics. In 2005, I was diagnosed with acute lymphocytic leukemia. Doctors at the time said, "Have you been exposed to anything? Do you have any family history?" Both answers, I said no, not that I know of, and no family history. More recently, I also suffered a miscarriage. I have children now, and luckily, thankfully, after miscarriage, I have a 7-year-old daughter and a 14-month-old son. Every day I pray for my own health, wondering if I am going to live to their adult life. Every day I pray that they are not put at additional risk because of what they're breathing in since birth for both of them. It is a worry that never leaves your mind, even though I'm 10 years past my diagnosis. There are cardiac implications from the 2 years and 4 months of chemotherapy given to me systemically up my spine and the radiation I received to my brain to prevent spread of the disease and return of the disease. I am in healthcare now. I am a nurse, and I know that ethylene oxide is not necessary to sterilize medical products. European countries have banned it. There's some other way. Sterigenics is putting on a front that this is necessary and that they are providing health to patients. They are not. They are taking health away and they are creating patients is exactly what they are doing. I thank you for listening to my story. Sterigenics just needs to leave. There is no amount of ethylene oxide that is safe. The EPA stated it themselves on their prior version of ethylene oxide listed on their federal website, which has now changed and been amended. There's no risk. There's no level of exposure that doesn't lead to a risk if you're chronically exposed. So it's just they themselves have defined what needs to happen, and that is that there can be no more exposure. So they need to leave.
Teresa,
Yes. Yes.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Teresa.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Lisa Flanagan, Lisa Flanagan. I'm here today to speak on my behalf of myself, my family, my twin sister in particular, and my nieces who still currently live there. They're in high school. For those who can no longer speak, who have, don't have that opportunity, they were taken, and so that this doesn't happen anymore. Sterigenics should not be allowed to emit any of ETO, ethylene oxide, of any level. It needs to stop. I had lived in the area. I grew up for 17 years. I grew up in the early 80s, mid 80s, for 17 years. We played out in the parks. You could play in the parks and the pools, and we were outside breathing the air. I grew up 1.3 miles in the Hinswood community and then moved over into the Timberlake area, which is 1.8 miles approximately away. I attended Hinsdale South High School. I have numerous friends who have been diagnosed with cancer. There's a cancer cluster on the Clarendon Hills Road from 91st on down. Numerous. This needs to stop. So my journey with this cancer, horrible cancer journey, began over 10 years ago in 2006, 2007, right at the beginning of the year of 2007, I was diagnosed with the Hodgkin's lymphoma. I had to endure 6 months worth of ABVD. I developed bleomycin toxicity of the lungs. I couldn't breathe. very well and had to go on numerous steroids. I did fortunately go into remission, but then my cancer came back a year later, almost to the day. In 2008, I had to endure the news that I went into relapse, and I could, this is already life-threatening and I could die. I had to go see therapists and talk to numerous people to deal with this. When all this happened, I was fortunate by the grace of God that I had a twin sister, and she could give me a syngeneic transplant, which, cancer just really, chemotherapy is awful, and they have a saying, chemotherapy sucks, and it really does, but when I had to go through the syngeneic transplant, I was 30 days in isolation in the hospital. I didn't know where I was. There was a week of time. I don't even remember where I was. I had dyskinesia, which I had a drug allergy reaction. So many complications associated, graft versus host disease, the mental anguish. But I came through it. It was pretty much all through the year of 2008 that I was receiving treatment for my relapse. I just want this to stop. Nobody should have to go through this cancer anymore. I can't have children. I went into menopause. Nobody should be forced to have that taken away. I was right in my childbearing years and ready to have a family, and that was taken away. I didn't have a choice. I'm thankful to be here, and I want to fight to get this stopped, and I want to fight so that my nieces don't have to face this, and all the other people in the community. I'm here for the community, and it's just unconscionable that they would admit any amount of ETO, and it's not acceptable, and we need to stop it. So, thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Trish Watt.
Well, my name is Trish Watt, Trishwatt. I have to read because I get so emotional. I have lived in Willowbrook for 40 years on Midway Drive. 35 of those years I've been breathing in ethylene oxide, unbeknownst to myself, my family, or my children, and grandchildren for that matter. I was diagnosed with triple-negative breast cancer, which means it's environmental. It is not hormonal. I am the first person, in my family that got it, and thank God nobody since. We live 3 blocks from this company. We have parks that we played in. We have pools that we swam in. When I got breast cancer, the first time was 2005. I went through chemo, I went through radiation. I put my family through chemo and radiation. 2010, things started showing up, and I chose to have a bilateral mastectomy. Every day I look in the mirror, I have to see the scars. It has caused numerous pain and problems with intimacy. Your whole world changes. We love where we live, obviously, or we wouldn't have been there 40 years. The guilt that I feel on a daily basis that my grandchildren or children will get this. I have 2 daughters who lived there for 20 years with us. I have 3 grandchildren that live within a half mile of this place. And thank God they've not come down with anything, but it took almost 20 years for me to get. So I think it's unconscionable for a company to think that they could reopen and re-emit this stuff into the air, knowing full well that on my street alone, which is maybe 4 blocks long, there's been over 10 to 15 people that have cancer or have died from cancer or currently have cancer. So it's not just a chance. It is a cancer-causing carcinogen. Please help us keep this company closed.
Thank you, Trish.
Oh, sorry.
Pat, would you like to say?
My name's Patrick Salvi Jr. My last name is S-A-L-V-I. And our law firm, Salvi, Shostak, and Pritchard, with other law firms, are representing these folks. You just heard 6 stories. 6. You just heard the devastation that Sterigenics has caused to these 6 individuals. But there have been hundreds of thousands of people that have been exposed to this cancer-causing mutagenic chemical, this gas. What does that mean? It causes cancer by creating a mutation in human cells so that our bodies can no longer fend off cancer cells, prevent tumor formation. And so that's why, over the course of 34 years, you have tens of thousands of people that have been affected. And what we see now, the reason why we're here today, the 30-plus cases that have been filed yesterday, is just the tip of the iceberg. Because between the various law firms that are handling these cases, they're going to be in the thousands, ultimately, that are filed. There are countless more people out there that have been injured who perhaps have not contacted a lawyer, and countless more people out there who simply have not yet become ill because of what Sterigenics has done. And so here we are with all the devastation that they've caused and the audacity of this company that they want to reopen in this community, as if they are entitled to any level of trust, when over the years, as has been pointed out, they chose the cheapest yet most harmful way to conduct business. And so we've heard from time to time, I think people that don't have a full understanding of what's going on in this community will sometimes ask, well, why don't they move? And that might be coming from a good place, but let's understand one thing. The investors, the Sterigenics executives, maybe they can afford 2 mortgages. But most people can't, certainly not if you've been crippled by illness. So the people that live there should not move. It's Sterigenics that needs to go. And so with these lawsuits, what we're able to do with the civil justice system, the 7th Amendment of the Constitution, what makes one of the things that does make this country outstanding is the fact that we have the right to a trial by jury, where folks in the community ultimately are able to decide what is right conduct and what is wrong conduct. And there's no doubt in our minds that the people of the community will speak, we will get justice, the attorneys, the clients here, and the countless more clients that we represent are going to bring that fight to them, and we are going to be successful. And so I think we'll open it up to questions.
What's the total number of plaintiffs so far represented by all the law firms in the room?
Well, I know for our firm is about 75 at this point. I don't know the numbers from other firms, but and additional clients beyond that with respect to economic loss, meaning the diminishment in home value is a case that for some folks that is certainly there as well. The idea that if you wanted to try, as it was suggested by Pat here, the idea of trying to sell your home. I've been told that all of a sudden signs are going up all over the place. Teresa and I spoke about that in her neighborhood. Signs all of a sudden just started cropping up, houses for sale. So it's a lot easier said than done, and it's really drawn the value of homes down significantly. So there's others as well, Dane, in terms of clients that we have in that regard. I don't know about the other firms. I suspect, as Pat has indicated, it's many hundreds at this point, and it will keep increasing. It's kind of the tip of the iceberg in terms of people that are likely affected. Pat, I don't know if you have anything else.
No, I think several firms, including Todd's, have up to 100 or even in the hundreds. And so when it's accumulated, there hasn't been a specific number necessarily put together. But it definitely eclipses 1,000, and we expect it to be into the thousands.
So where do things stand currently in Sterigenics? They're planning to reopen with some pollution reducing technology. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that's our understanding in terms of there's briefing going on right now in DuPage in terms of what may happen there. There's been opposition put forth against that, and the court's going to eventually have a hearing. I think it's set for September, if I'm not mistaken. Is that
Sixth.
September 6th?
You have no confidence that will...
Well, I wouldn't go that far. We'd like to see the judge do something, but I don't know in terms of what the judge...
No, I mean in terms of what that equipment might do.
Oh, no, I don't think anyone does. I mean, I think that really comes down to a matter of trust. The numbers, the numbers that they've put out for years and years and years, and the idea that they can all of a sudden do 85 pounds versus the thousands they've been doing, I certainly have no trust in it, and I don't think the citizens in the area do either. Why would we?
Others?
It's somewhat a difficult question of these heartbreaking stories we're hearing, but how do you in a court of law prove the connection?
Well, you heard one story here already. The breast cancer was caused for Trish by exposure. She's 3 blocks away. Those are the kinds of things you have to do. You also have experts who have an understanding of the chemicals and the kinds of cancers it typically does cause, sort of the core or primary cancers that are caused by ethylene oxide exposure, and the amount of ethylene oxide exposure. Epidemiologists will be hired, other types of experts relating to chemical exposure and the statistical analysis that will be put forth. That's one of the ways we will go about proving that. I don't know if anyone else wants to comment.
No, and you touched on it, but every individual case is an individual case, and so each individual case will have its proofs towards that end. But just as an example, you have someone with breast cancer who's BRCA negative, has no family history, and has a block where they live, a street, where there is an inordinate amount of cancer. And so all those facts go before the jury for the jury to decide whether that's the case. But there are untold stories, and so many stories we hear from clients, and so frequently one of the first things they say is, and all across the street, down the street, so many people were getting cancer, and we just thought we were unlucky until a year ago, and we figured out why.
Tell us about the timing of these filing of these lawsuits.
The timing
of the filing.
As I mentioned earlier, the removal of the first 11 cases that were filed occurred last fall. They went to different judges over in federal court. It's a strategic maneuver, I guess, to be kind, by Sterigenics to take it to a place that they feel they might do better in terms of a jury outcome or a judge outcome. I'm not commenting on that one way or the other. That tends to be what corporate defendants will do. They want to go to federal court. They don't want to be exposed to citizens from Illinois commenting, at least from the communities locally, commenting on what's happened. So that's what happened to those 11 cases. And we just received an order last week from Chief Judge Pallmeyer. She had this case during the summer, and she made the decision that it was improper to remove those cases to federal court and remanded them. But that's the kind of time it takes, the kind of delay that's been incorporated into this process when someone does something like that. So all of those cases are back, those 11 cases, and as a result, it opened up the opportunity to begin filing cases on behalf of those 32 that were filed yesterday. Does that help?
Yeah, and when I said that each individual case is its own individual case, that comes with its own complaint, that comes with having to serve the defendants, and et cetera, with filing complaints. So when you have such volume, typically you'll see that in a rolling fashion. So the first wave are these 30 cases, and over the course of the next weeks and months, that's just going to keep continuing from all the law firms. So this is just kind of the first step as we move forward and continue to file additional cases, because there's a lot more coming.